The 16th of December, 1944. Nazi Germany launches a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest. American soldiers, unprepared for what is coming, are about to face the deadliest battle of their lives. One young private from Brooklyn will make a choice that saves his entire battalion. Private James Whitmore was just 19 years old. 6 months earlier, he'd left his job at a Brooklyn factory to join the army. He'd never fired a real weapon in combat before. His entire unit was about to learn what war really meant. The 101st Airborne was stationed near the town of Bastogne. When the German offensive began, they had no time to prepare. Intelligence had failed, the Nazis were coming, and the American lines were crumbling. James's company was ordered to hold a key ridge overlooking the main German advance route. Just 150 men against thousands of enemy soldiers. They had limited ammunition and no reinforcements. That first night was brutal. Temperature dropped to -15 degrees Fahrenheit. Men suffered from frostbite while waiting for an enemy they couldn't see. James stayed awake, rifle gripped tight, praying he'd survive the night. At dawn, James heard the sound that would change everything: engines. Hundreds of them. German panzers rolling through the snow, their silhouettes appearing like monsters through the fog. The German 1st SS Panzer Corps was rolling straight at them. Intelligence later showed approximately 2,000 German soldiers supported by 30 heavy tanks heading directly toward James's position. The Americans were outnumbered 13-1. The company commander, Captain Richard Winters, gave the order, "Hold the ridge at all costs." Those 5 words meant only one thing. They were probably going to die here. The German advance stopped 800 yards away. Artillery began. Shells screamed overhead and exploded around the ridge. Rocks, snow, and frozen earth erupted in massive explosions. James buried his head, praying. Then came the infantry assault. Thousands of German soldiers, screaming and advancing through the snow. Their machine gun fire cut down the American defenders in waves. In the first 10 minutes, 3 Americans were killed. James watched Tommy get hit. His best friend fell in the snow. James screamed, trying to pull him back to the trench, but it was too late. Tommy was gone. James's fear turned to rage. This was personal now. James made a decision. Instead of staying in his foxhole, he grabbed a machine gun and climbed onto the parapet of the trench. Completely exposed. Completely vulnerable. From that exposed position, James started firing. The machine gun kicked against his shoulder as he swept it across the German lines. He was one teenager, alone, against an army. The German advance wavered. The unexpected machine gun fire was cutting them down faster than they expected. For the first time, the Nazi assault hesitated. But James was running out of ammunition. His hands were frozen. His fingers barely worked. Bullets whizzed past his head. One grazed his left arm, tearing cloth and drawing blood. He didn't stop firing. Behind him, Captain Winters watched in amazement. One soldier, one gun holding back an entire assault. He immediately ordered reinforcements to James's position to support his incredible stand. With backup support, the Americans began to gain ground. The German assault, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes earlier, was being repulsed. James's actions had bought precious time. The Germans regrouped. They brought up more panzers and prepared a second assault. This time, they came with armor support. Artillery intensified. The bombardment was apocalyptic. When the smoke cleared, 3 American soldiers were dead. James had taken shrapnel in his leg. Another soldier, Private Robert Clark, took a direct shell fragment to his stomach, but the line still held. A panzer broke through the line. The massive German tank was 50 yards from James's position. One shot from its cannon would kill everyone in the trench. James made another impossible choice. James grabbed a satchel charge, an explosive device with enough force to damage armor. With his leg bleeding and his body frozen, he limped toward that tank. His friends screamed at him to stop. He kept going. He was 20 yards away when the panzer spotted him. The tank commander shouted orders. German machine gunners opened fire. Bullets tore up the snow around James as he ran forward. James reached the tank. His frozen hands fumbled with the satchel charge. The tank commander tried to reverse and run him down. James was out of time. He pressed the trigger on the charge. Then he dove away from the tank. The explosion was tremendous. James hit the ground hard. He couldn't move. His leg was shattered. His uniform was burning, but he was alive, and the Panzer was destroyed. American medics rushed out into the snowy field under fire. They dragged James back to the trench. He was bleeding heavily, in shock. But he was still alive, and so were his comrades because of his actions. The German assault faltered. The loss of the Panzer had demoralized them. More importantly, they'd lost the element of surprise. American reinforcements began arriving from neighboring units. The breakthrough wasn't going to happen here. By that afternoon, the German assault had been repulsed. The ridge held. The Americans had stopped a Nazi breakthrough attempt at this critical position. James was evacuated to a field hospital. Doctors examined his shattered leg, frostbite, shrapnel wounds, burns from the explosion. He'd survived the unsurvivable. The Battle of the Bulge lasted 6 weeks. It was the bloodiest battle American soldiers faced in Europe. 100,000 casualties total. But because of men like James, the Germans never achieved their goal of breaking through. Captain Winters personally recommended James for the Medal of Honor. The citation read, "Single-handedly held back a German assault, destroyed an enemy panzer, and enabled the defense of a critical position, saving the lives of his entire unit." But James never received the medal. His paperwork got lost in the chaos of the war. He spent the rest of the battle in a hospital bed. He survived, but his combat days were over. When the war ended in May 1945, James was discharged. He returned to Brooklyn. He never talked about what happened at that ridge. For 40 years, his heroism went unrecognized. In 1985, 40 years later, a historian researching the Battle of the Bulge found James living quietly in a small apartment. Working as a dock worker, he was shocked when she told him the army was finally acknowledging his heroism. In 1986, at age 61, Private James Whitmore finally received the Medal of Honor. President Ronald Reagan presented it personally. James cried. After 4 decades, his sacrifice had been remembered. His citation finally read publicly. For extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming enemy forces, sacrifice above and beyond the call of duty, and single-handedly turning the tide of battle at a critical moment in World War II, James Whitmore became a hero the world would remember. James Whitmore lived until 2005, passing away at age 80. He remained humble about his actions at the Battle of the Bulge, often saying he was just doing his job. But the soldiers he saved, those who came home to their families, they knew the truth. He'd been their lifeline in hell. The Battle of the Bulge was the turning point of World War II in Europe. The Nazis' last major offensive failed. Within months, American forces were advancing toward Germany. By May 1945, the war was over. But none of that would have happened if James Whitmore hadn't held that ridge. The Battle of the Bulge was the turning point of the war, but it was held together by the courage of individuals, like Private Whitmore. Don't let these stories fade into the snow of the Ardennes. Subscribe to ensure these epic battles are never forgotten.